My name is Paul Button. I'm the managing principal for a group called ValuMetrix, part of Johnson & Johnson. I'm not an Englishman. I'm a Welshman. So I can do this presentation in Welsh or in English, but not Italian. I think probably English is better. Yeah. So, I want to talk to you about the appropriate application of lean. And I want to emphasize the word appropriate because I've been traveling around many hospitals in Europe over the last 6 years. And unfortunately, I've seen lean implemented completely inappropriately. Yeah? And it gets a bad name, it gets a bad reputation, and the benefits that lean has to offer is often lost because people don't fully understand what they're trying to do. So I'm going to talk to you about the appropriate application of lean. Okay, so I want to start and talk about what I've called the driving forces of change in healthcare. And what you see on this slide is, if you look at this grey dot, that represents the healthcare worker, you and me. And we're all feeling this increased pressure. So what are we going to do about it? What can be done to ease this pressure? Many finance directors or purchasing directors who I speak to in hospitals tell me that they are seriously looking at their suppliers to try and save money. But I would propose that is not the right place to look. Because as you can see on the slide, typically 60 to 70% of a hospital spend will go on labor, on the workforce, typically. It'll vary a little bit, but this, I would propose, is the right place to look if we are to make substantial savings. And I'm not talking about firing people. Okay, let's make that loud and clear. Lean is not about firing people. If people come up to retirement age, then there may be a case for not replacing them. But we're not talking about firing people. We're talking about getting the most use out of our very precious resources, people. Doing more with less. And this survey was carried out by the Healthcare Financial Management Association a couple of years ago in the US, where they surveyed a large cohort of hospital administrators, financial people, and asked the questions, where should the top areas be targeted for savings? And you can see clearly 84% voted to improve processes to save costs. So process improvement, building in efficiency and productivity is the place to focus, or so this survey told us. And in Johnson & Johnson, historically, Johnson & Johnson are a company who sell products. Been in operation for 125 years, or a little over that, with annual sales approaching 68 billion US dollars. But J&J realizes that it's no longer sufficient to sell product. You have to sell a total value solution. We have the in-house expertise to transform processes within healthcare, so why wouldn't we take that expertise out to our client base? And that's what we do through the tool of ValuMetrix. And let me ask you this question, or let me ask you to vote. If I said to you the primary objective of implementing lean should be to save costs, how many would say that's true? How many would say it's false? How many don't know? Okay, I'm trying to get every hand to go up. It is completely false, but that's what your financial people will tell you. Oh yes, please implement lean so I can shave off costs. And all that does is it drives completely the wrong behavior, the wrong mindset. The main benefits of lean should be to reduce turnaround time. The biggest spend in your hospitals, of course, is on length of stay. And somebody told me earlier, if we can reduce 1 day of every hospital admission in Italy, that's equivalent to 1 billion euros. That's a lot of money for 1 day. Yeah, it's incredible. So reducing turnaround time is one of the biggest benefits of lean, and the improvements that we've achieved through our lean implementations in healthcare are typically 25 to 60%. Floor space. We've seen many projects proposed, millions of dollars, millions of euros to build new facilities, where if you look in the existing facility with some creative lean thinking, often you find you don't need, in fact, to build the new facility. So lean can reduce floor space. Obviously, it can improve quality, drive up the sigma level, okay, error reduction. Productivity. I'll show you some examples later of some photopheresis heart procedures moving from 9 a day to 18 a day with the same number of nurses and doctors. Inventory and supplies. How much inventory do you have tied up in your operating rooms? Have you ever measured it? How many millions of euros is it? Typically 5. What if you could reduce that to 1? That's a 4 million euro one-off cost saving. And your CFO will love you for it. Okay? It's not difficult to achieve this. And obviously enhanced workflow. Now, if we do all this and we get all this right, then the net result is going to be a reduction in cost. So we start to move forward. ValuMetrix is all about transforming healthcare. If we come into your hospital and give you a 5 or a 10% improvement, then we've failed. Because the aim is literally transformation, to turn that needle the whole 360 degrees. And the process excellence model that we use is as shown on the slide behind me. So let me briefly explain. Every one of us, I'm going to try and move to this side. Every one of us in this room has a current way of working. This is how our hospitals work today. We call this the current state. And to understand what's going on in that current state, we need to draw a map. In order for me to get to Como today, I needed a map. In fact, we use sat-nav, but you get the message. In order to get to A to B, you need a map. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to know where you're going. So you all work in a current state. Our collective aim should be to improve what we do today, yeah? Nobody would disagree with that. We have no choice. So we move from a current state to a future state value stream map. And once we arrive at the future state, that then becomes the current state. And we're starting to move into the spirit of continuous improvement. And we use 3 tool sets. 6 Sigma, which is basically reducing error, removing variation. Design excellence, we will work with architects to design lean into new builds or revamped facilities. And of course, lean, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, none of this happens without dedicated leadership, commitment, and involvement at all levels. I'll show you a slide towards the end which shows a photograph of a heart surgeon in Germany coming out of the theatre and running a daily scheduling meeting, applying lean tools. That is leadership. How many heart surgeons do you know who would be prepared to do that? To come out daily and schedule the next day's work with his team of nurses. That is fantastic leadership. And that is what makes lean successful. Let's look at the basics of lean. This might not be new to any of you, but it's good to have a little recap. Let's look at the origin of the methodology. Many people say lean came from Toyota. I would argue that it was Henry Ford who first thought of lean. He didn't call it lean. But here we see the integration of the processes of industrial production. This was the onset of the assembly line. But what Ford did was he introduced a push production system. And British Leyland, who many of you may remember, they went out of business about 20 years ago. I remember as a young boy driving around in with my parents and looking in the docks. Docks? And I would see hundreds and hundreds of British Leyland cars just sitting there in the docks. Yeah? Many of them were rusting because they weren't very good cars, not like Fiat or Mercedes or Toyota. But that was a push production system. They didn't know how many orders they had, they would just make. What Toyota did was they introduced the value stream concept and a pull production system. In a typical Toyota factory, you'll see one car coming off the end of the production line every 3 minutes. Every 180 seconds, a car comes off the end of the line. Why is it 3 minutes? Why do you think it's 3 minutes? Why not 10 minutes or 1 minute? Why is it 3 minutes? The reason is obvious. It's because one customer buys a car from Toyota every 3 minutes. They make to demand. They don't stock cars in docks because that's inventory being tied up. Just like you'll see in your operating theatres, millions of euros of inventory sitting on the shelf. Okay? So Toyota introduced the concept of value stream and pull production. They never called it lean. Two very clever gentlemen, Dan Jones and James Womack, came out with this book, The Machine That Changed the World. And this is where the term lean was implemented. And they defined it as lean provides a way to do more and more with less and less. Less human effort, less equipment, less time and less space, while coming closer and closer to providing customers with exactly what they want. Toyotas are experts at this. Yes, they've had a few problems with their cars of late, quite a few recalls. But I wonder how many other car manufacturers would have reacted in the spirit that Toyota reacted. They've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars to put this problem right. Now, I'm amongst a group of people who know what lean is, but let me ask you this simple question. I mean, tell me what is lean? What is it? I've got a flight at 9:30. Somebody tell me, what is lean? Just give me some word, one word.
Simple.
Simple, yeah. What else?
It's a simplification of the process.
Simplification of the process, yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. What else? What is lean?
No waste.
No waste, yeah. Simplification of processes, no waste. What else? Flow, yeah. Creating flow like Toyota. One car, every 3 minutes. Boom, boom. What else? All those answers are correct. Creating flow, eliminating waste, simplification of processes. But the most important thing about lean is what it says behind me. Changing the culture. Changing the way that nurses, lab technicians, pharmacists, doctors, administrators, changing the way that people think. That's what lean really is. Changing the way we think about what we're doing. Looking outside of the box. Yeah? And once we start to get this right, our culture, our people, will work with us to start to create flow in the value stream. Because I've never seen a hospital yet where I don't see patients waiting, where I don't see clinicians waiting, where I don't see blood tubes waiting. Everything is waiting. There is no flow in healthcare. What a wonderful place it would be if we could create flow. And then we look at eliminating waste. And in your business, there are 8 types of muda. Muda is the Japanese word for waste. It's not a good word. If you live in Japan, you don't want to mention the muda word. But those are the 8 types of waste that you'll see in your hospitals. Scrap, waiting, inventory, motion, transport, overproduction, overprocessing, and talent. And the biggest problem in your hospitals is probably the waste of waiting. Because wasting costs money. Yeah, length of stay. 800 euros a day, 600 euros, depending on the bed, of course. And the one that saddens me is this, the waste of talent. And I see highly qualified laboratory technicians spending 5 hours a day sitting down at a computer entering data. Surely that could be automated. So that's what lean is. Change the culture, create flow, eliminate waste. We always take lots of photographs when we carry out lean assessments. And what you see behind me is this is a large London teaching hospital. These guys are queuing up for phlebotomy, to have blood taken. They typically wait about 2 hours. It's not good for the patient experience. And when the blood is collected, it gets put into one of these plastic bags. And the plastic bag gets put into this basket. And the basket is taken to the laboratory. When the basket gets taken to the laboratory, which patient will be tested first? The one on the top. Yeah? So this one has been sat there for 2 hours and 58 minutes. How do I know? Because I followed it with a video camera. Do you know a 3-hour delay in a blood test can equal 1 extra night in hospital? You know that? Arrives in the lab, this gets tested first, that gets tested last. What's the English word? I could tell you the Welsh word, but the English word for this, what do we call it? Begins with a B. It's what Toyota never do. It's called batching. Okay, we move our work in batches. And what batching does is it prohibits the thing that we're trying to create. Flow. So let me give you a little example. Now you can apply this to any aspect within healthcare, within your hospital. Batch logic versus flow logic. We've got 3 nurses, 3 processes. Maybe it's admission, pre-obs, transport to theatre, whatever, it doesn't matter. We're going to take 1 minute per process and we're going to process 10 patients. Here's what happens. These guys are working in batch mode. 3 operators. Operator 1 processes the first 10 specimens. 1 minute per specimen or per patient. How much time has gone? 10 minutes. No catch. Now, operator 2 can start. She's been waiting 10 minutes. Processes the 10 patients. How much time has gone? 20 minutes. Operator 3, same thing. First result is available for the clinician here, 21 minutes. And the last result, 30 minutes. That's how your hospital probably works today. That's why you see so many patients sitting around. In waiting rooms, do you have waiting rooms? Yeah? Waiting rooms. Now look what happens if we apply single piece flow. Operator 1 processes the patient, passes it to operator 2, to operator 3. We've got the first result in 3 minutes. 7 times faster. And what we see here is obviously a reduction of the risk of error, because we're only dealing with 1 at a time. And we see a much better atmosphere, a much better sense of teamwork. Everybody's working as a team. And not only are we getting quicker results, but we're getting consistent results. This clinician can expect to see a patient every 3 minutes. At the moment, they don't know how long they have to wait. Because one day it might be an hour, the next day it might be 5 minutes. So consistency is equally as important as speed. That's what I see in typical laboratories. Okay? The staff in this laboratory work from 9 till 5. 80% of their work is processed between 12 and 2. And yet they all work from 9 to 5. So this all arrives in a 2-hour time window. And what you see is a massive problem throughout the whole laboratory. This lady's job is to create flow. She's looking at patient specimens, booking them in, creating flow. What do you see in the photograph? What's happening? What do you see? Thank you. Maurizio's got it. Her manager never got it. Because this is how it's been for the last 25 years. She's on the telephone. And this telephone rung 32 times in 2 hours. Now, if you add that up to the delay on these patients getting a lab test and what that means in terms of increased stay in the hospital, it is massive. So what's the answer? You've seen the problem, what's the answer? I'm not going to tell you, we'll come into your hospital and no. The answer is obvious. Take the phone out of the laboratory. Right? Give it to a dedicated person. Do you think they have telephones on Toyota production lines? Oh, hello, mother. Here's our model. This is how we work. The first thing we do is map the value stream. Then we follow the journey of the product or the patient with video cameras. Very powerful. We follow the activities of the nurses, the caregivers. How many kilometers does a typical nurse walk each day? 5, 6, 7? It's all cost. We look at the facility layout, inventory management, standardized work, performance measurements, putting the right measures in place to drive improvement. Let's look at a value stream map. Understanding the big picture. If you like, it's the executive helicopter ride. In a helicopter looking down at what's going on in your hospital. And we map the current state, and we work with your teams to come up with a creative future state and move towards it. That's a very complex value stream map. In fact, this took 6 weeks to draw. It's the journey of a shortness of breath, can I say that? Respiratory problem patients. 60% of admissions in this hospital are due to shortness of breath. And this is the complexity that these patients have to go through before they can go home. That's where they want to get to. And the typical length of stay here is 11.5 days. And the goal is to reduce that to 5 days. If we can do that in every hospital in the UK, we'll soon save that 20 billion pounds, 25 billion euros, which is the target set. But nobody's doing it. The answer is maybe too obvious. If I drill down into one of these boxes, I'll see what goes on in surgery. That's what goes on in the operating room. Very, very complex. Our job, this is one of my consultants, Robert Schraders. He's working with a team to come up with a simplification of this to this. And the goal attached to it is a productivity increase of 15%. If we set our goals low to start with, we'll achieve them. And people will get motivated and drive improvement even further. If we set that goal at 50% and failed, the team would walk away saddened. Culture. Changing the culture. As I come near to the end of my presentation, I just want to give you some case study examples. This is Northampton General Hospital that used lean to cut turnaround time by 40%, saved £158,000 per annum in labour, storage and inventory. Nobody was fired. The hospital was able to absorb more work because of the extra capacity that had been created. Oh, and here's the lean team that was employed to make these changes happen. These are from all different parts of the hospital. Pharmacy, operating room. This was a laboratory project. But people come from each part of the hospital. Why? Because that's maybe where we'll move next. So we've got somebody from pharmacy who's already been through a lean project. This is Christchurch Hospital in New Zealand, where they used lean to cut scrub nurse setup time by 45%. What that meant was they could carry out 10% extra general surgery cases per annum with the same number of staff. So just by improving room time changeover, an extra 10% of general surgery procedures per annum. This is not rocket science. It's not difficult to do if you know what you're doing and you do it properly. This is the Royal Free Hospital in London, where they've doubled photophoresis procedures, eliminated the need to work weekends, reduced from 7 days a week to 4, but doubled their number of treatments. This is the Royal Free Hospital in London, where they've cut specimen reception time by 77%. And what this means is getting results more quickly means patients can get their chemotherapy earlier in the day. Dr. Michael Thomas, president of the ACB. This is Heart Center in Germany that I told you about recently. This is one of my last projects. This gentleman, Professor Barton, is the guy that carries out the heart transplants. And he is with his team of nurses using a day-by-the-hour lean scheduling tool to drive improvement. And here you can see this is before lean. This is predicted number of treatments after lean. The ValuMetrix approach is all about changing the culture, based on this proverb. If you tell me something, I'll forget. If you show me, I may remember, but if you involve me, I've got it. I'm engaged. So we ask you to nominate a team within your hospital who we will work with, involving them to see, feel, and touch the improvements. And the way it works is by way of, we come on site, we do a capabilities presentation, similar to what I'm doing here now. Then we carry out the lean assessment. This is the measure phase to understand where the opportunities are. We come back 3 weeks later, detailed report, cost improvement plan. How much money can you save by implementing lean? And then if you like what you see and you get the go-ahead, then we come and implement the changes together with your team. Remember, this isn't consultancy, this is implementation. You're doing the work facilitated by our consultants. And remember this, lean is a never-ending journey. Once you get on this train, you don't want to get off. And yet the most important thing is the dedication of leadership, the right leadership from within the hospital. And you have to have support at board level. You have to have the hospital CEO to buy into this. Otherwise, it will not work. Grazie, thank you, and in my Welsh native tongue, diolch yn fawr. Thank you.